Microsoft SharePoint attack, what you need to know. A wave of cyber attacks is shaking the Microsoft community, and this time the consequences are both urgent and unsettling. There is currently no fix available. If you manage a Microsoft SharePoint server, brace yourself, your environment could be at risk this very moment. Why? Because cybercriminals are exploiting a newly discovered vulnerability, CV 2025-53770, en masse. And unlike in many past crises, there's no reassuring patch you can simply apply to protect yourself. But what's actually happening, and what can you do in the meantime? Let's dig deeper, because here's where the situation gets truly alarming. Hashtag ongoing SharePoint attacks. No safety net, no patch yet. Cyber threats targeting Microsoft products are new, but the past few weeks have seen a historic uptick. From Amazon alerting millions of Prime users about account compromises to viral scare stories about Ring doorbell hacks, online security has been front-page news. The difference? Most of these incidents could be handled with basic precautions or turned out to be false alarms. But the attack on SharePoint Server, identified as CV 2025-53770, offers neither reassurance nor an immediate fix. According to security researchers at iResearch, and confirmed by Microsoft itself, cyber attackers are actively penetrating on-premises SharePoint servers all over the world. Microsoft has openly acknowledged a patch is currently not available for this vulnerability, leaving customers exposed and anxious. Do you think Microsoft should have been better prepared to handle such critical risks, or is this simply the harsh reality in our ever-evolving security landscape? Hashtag YCV 2025-53770, ToolShell, should concern every admin. What sets this vulnerability apart? For starters, it allows attackers to seize control of SharePoint servers without ever needing to authenticate, meaning traditional safeguards like MFA, multi-factor authentication, or SSO, single sign-on, are effectively bypassed. The ramifications are huge. Once inside, attackers can execute remote code, extract every piece of SharePoint content, manipulate system files and settings, and even move laterally across the broader Windows domain. No exaggeration, this isn't a theoretical threat, but a real, ongoing crisis. But here's the part most people miss. The heist doesn't stop at files. Attackers can also steal cryptographic keys, granting them the ability to impersonate legitimate users or services, sometimes even long after a patch is eventually issued. The fix, when it comes, won't be a magic bullet. You'll also need to rotate all privileged credentials and secret keys to render any stolen tokens useless. This extra step is complex, and skipping it could leave organizations exposed to long-tail risks. Given that SharePoint frequently connects to business-critical services such as Outlook, Teams, and OneDrive, compromising a single on-premises server could open the door to widespread data theft, password compromise, and lateral attacks across your entire network. Hashtag how should you respond? With no patch available? Microsoft's own Security Response Center has confirmed they're urgently developing a security update, but until that lands, you'll need to take matters into your own hands. Immediately. Enable the anti-malware scan interface, AIM-MSI, integration within SharePoint and ensure Microsoft Defender antivirus is deployed on every SharePoint server. If for any reason you cannot enable AIM-MSI, Microsoft starkly advises disconnecting your server from the internet until a security patch becomes available. This may sound extreme, but when faced with a zero-day threat being exploited at scale, it's often the only way to protect valuable assets and prevent further spread. Hashtag so. Is Microsoft doing enough, and what should happen next? This brings up an important and controversial question. Has Microsoft acted swiftly and transparently enough in alerting customers and providing mitigation advice? Or does this incident expose flaws in how large tech vendors respond to widespread zero-day threats? And here's a thought-provoking twist. If your organization relies heavily on on-premises infrastructure, is it finally time to reconsider your risk tolerance and move to cloud-based alternatives with a faster security response? Share your thoughts. Are you frustrated by Microsoft's response, or do you think they're doing all any company could under these extraordinary circumstances? Let's get the debate going in the comments below. Your voice matters. Urgent: SharePoint 0 day actively exploited, no patch available. What you must do now. Imagine your most critical internal tools suddenly under siege by invisible cyber attackers. No warning, no escape. That's the reality Microsoft is now sounding the alarm about for SharePoint Server users. A high-severity zero-day vulnerability, CVE 2025-53770, has been weaponized in real-world attacks, and here's the kicker: there's no patch yet. Microsoft's CVSS score of 9.8 for this flaw? That's basically a red flag waving at you to act now. But here's where it gets controversial. Microsoft isn't just dealing with a new vulnerability. They've confirmed this is a variant of another recently disclosed flaw, CVE 2025-49706. That means attackers are adapting their tactics faster than security teams can react. Google's Threat Intelligence Group has already seen threat actors using this exploit to drop malicious web shells, essentially backdoors, onto compromised servers. These web shells let attackers siphon sensitive cryptographic secrets, granting them persistent, password-free access. And this is the part most people miss. The damage isn't just about data theft. It's about turning trusted systems into launchpads for future attacks. Security researchers dropped a bombshell by tracking dozens of active compromises linked to this flaw. Their forensic analysis points to attacks spiking on July 18th and 19th, targeting systems during peak business hours in Europe. Microsoft's response? A mix of urgent mitigation strategies and a promise that a patch is in the works. But here's the rub: while waiting for the fix, organizations need to manually configure advanced threat protection tools like AMSI integration for SharePoint and deploy Microsoft Defender AV on all servers. Think of it as building a moat around your digital castle while the architects are still designing the walls. Charles Carmichael, CTO of Mandiant Consulting, put it bluntly. You can't afford to wait. Assume your systems are already compromised, investigate retroactively, and act as if the attacker is already inside. His words? A chilling reminder that in cyber warfare, denial is a luxury you can't afford. So, what's the takeaway for businesses? This isn't just a technical alert, it's a wake-up call. The absence of a patch forces a critical question: should organizations prioritize temporary mitigations or invest in long-term infrastructure hardening? And if attackers can exploit a known variant so swiftly, how many other vulnerabilities are already being weaponized in the shadows? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think the lack of immediate patches is a systemic flaw in cybersecurity response, or a necessary trade-off for faster innovation? Share your take below. Helpful resources for CVE 2025-53770. Microsoft's official guidance for SharePoint vulnerability, CVE 2025-53770. Link: https://msrc.microsoft.com/blog/2025/07/SharePoint-guidance-for-SharePoint-vulnerability-kvad-2025-53770. iSecurity's deep dive into the SharePoint exploitation campaign. Link: https://research.eye.security/SharePoint-under-siege. Step-by-step guide to configuring AMSI integration for SharePoint. Link: https://learn.microsoft.com/and-us/SharePoint/server/configure-AMSI-integration. Stay tuned. Security Week will update this story as more details emerge. The digital battlefield is evolving faster than ever, and your next move just might determine whether your systems survive the onslaught. SharePoint 0-day RC attack. ToolShell vulnerability grants hackers full server access. A chilling wake-up call for organizations worldwide. Cybercriminals are now exploiting a previously unknown vulnerability in Microsoft SharePoint to take full, unauthenticated control of corporate systems, and the attacks are moving at an unprecedented pace. Early research from Dutch cybersecurity firm iSecurity, published on July 18, 2025, confirms that attackers are actively using a malicious exploit chain, dubbed ToolShell, to bypass authentication, steal sensitive server keys, and establish persistent backdoors on vulnerable SharePoint servers. But here's where it gets controversial. The speed at which this exploit went from academic theory to real-world weaponization is being called one of the fastest such transitions in cybersecurity history. ## how the exploit works, and why it's so dangerous. This attack isn't your average phishing scam or malware campaign. The ToolShell exploit chain taps into not one, but two critical vulnerabilities, CV 2025-49706 and CV 2025-49704, both first demonstrated by German security firm Code White GmbH at PWN2 Berlin 2025. The vulnerabilities remain mostly theoretical until July 15, 2025, when Code White published detailed technical findings online, following Microsoft's release of official patches for the issues. And this is the part most people miss. Within just 72 hours, cybercriminals had already weaponized the exploit, launching coordinated, global attacks against unpatched SharePoint servers. Starting at 1800 hours Central European Time on July 18, 2025, the first wave of attacks originated from the IP address 107.191.58.76. Less than a day later, a second, distinct wave began from 104.238.159.149 on July 19, 2025. This rapid and targeted rollout suggests a highly organized adversary with resources and intent far beyond petty crime. The attack specifically targets SharePoint/_layouts/15/toolpane.aspx endpoint, bypassing standard authentication requirements. Unlike traditional web shells, which typically only execute commands, the ToolShell payload goes much further. It actively hunts for, steals, and exports SharePoint's cryptographic keys, including the essential validation key and decryption key, effectively holding the keys to the kingdom. Drawing a parallel to a known previous vulnerability, CV 2021-28474, the attackers leverage deserialization flaws in SharePoint's rendering engine. Once they have the server's validation key, they can craft malicious __viewstate payloads that SharePoint mistakenly trusts as legitimate. This means attackers can execute arbitrary code remotely, with no need for usernames, passwords, or additional exploits. All existing security controls are rendered useless against such an attack. iSecurity's global scan uncovered dozens of breached SharePoint servers across multiple organizations, confirming the severity and reach of the campaign. The firm has engaged in responsible disclosure, notifying affected organizations and National Computer Emergency Response Teams, CERTs, worldwide. ## what Microsoft is doing, and what you must do now. Microsoft has officially recognized the threat, assigning the ongoing in the wild attacks the identifier CV 2025-53770. The company has issued comprehensive security patches for SharePoint Server 2016, SharePoint 2019, and SharePoint Subscription Edition as part of its July 2025 security updates. It's critical to understand that no alternative workarounds exist. Only immediate patching will completely eliminate the vulnerability. The affected versions are SharePoint Server 2016, before 16.0.5508.1000, or KB5002744, SharePoint Server 2019, before 16.0.104117.20027, or KB5002741, and SharePoint Subscription Edition, before 16.0.18526.20424. Organizations must also conduct thorough compromise assessments immediately, even after patching, because attackers can maintain persistent, hidden access that survives updates, reboots, and standard scans. ## Indicators of Compromise IOCS. To help defenders spot potential attacks, here are some key indicators. Source IPs *107.191.58.76, first attack wave, July 18, 2025. 104.238.159.149, second wave, July 19, 2025. User agent string *Mozilla /5.0, Windows NT 10.0, Win64, x64, RV 120.0, Gecko /20100101 Firefox /120.0, also seen URL encoded in IIS logs. Exploit path *post /_layouts /15 /toolpane.aspx, display mode equals edit, and a equals /toolpane.aspx, triggers initial vulnerability, CV 2025-49706. Get request */_layouts /15 undisclosed.aspx, request to the planted malicious ASPX file, used to extract cryptographic keys. File name withheld for security. File hashes SHA-256-480-287-2EDC335-CCB7C0F0A5613337CF24A84030, initial web shell. B397C14BEF7FD55814F0D659687947D947D917512512Face679731000B70, another malicious file. FA3874601F53401C022BTCBDF301C6Z6033497C0B723617741AF7, payload specifically targeting _viewstate. Scrutinize your logs for these indicators. They could mean your organization is already compromised. Hashtag controversial question: is patching enough? Let's be real, patching is essential, but it's not a silver bullet. Attackers can leave behind sophisticated backdoors that persist long after the vulnerability is fixed. This raises an uncomfortable question: are traditional patch and security practices still sufficient in today's threat landscape, or do organizations need more aggressive, behavior-based detection and response strategies? We invite you to weigh in. Do you think Microsoft and the broader cybersecurity community are moving fast enough to protect enterprises from these advanced threats? Or is the pace of exploitation now outstripping our ability to respond? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's get the conversation started.